areas, they're driving somewhere else, they're taking the merchandise out, and they're getting right back. Or they'll call somebody, and as they come out of the store, this grocery store, they probably know maybe somebody who's in that van. They hop in the vehicle, they take the goods with them, and then they come back. So it continues to grow. It continues to expand further and further into the outskirts of Santa Monica. Instead of when we focused on it earlier, it was right there off of Ocean. So the civil unrest here is getting obviously out of control, but it's also expanding into a larger and larger area, which is going to be more difficult for police to contain. And as I look out the window, I do not see any of the National Guard here, but you can tell this Vons is being looted, and there's not going to be much left. This is ongoing. And I don't see any police really moving into this location right here. So really at this point, the police are at the mercy of how many resources they have and trying to figure out exactly where the best place for those resources may be.
All right, yeah, there are priorities, and police need to be most concerned about the large group of protesters, but there you see more and more people showing up to that Vons and the pharmacy and looting that facility. And as we speculated, and there's a car coming in quickly, as we speculated, some of this looting, these people who are doing it, they may have a busy day today just looking for one target after another. So we'll watch that situation.
David.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's a pharmacy in this Vons.
Right.
Open up a little bit. Did it say pharmacy? And, you know, you start to think about that, and then you start to think there's gates in there that will really control the pharmacy. Did it say pharmacy on the left, Chad?
It did say pharmacy in that area where that one guy, there it is right there.
Yeah, and I think if anything, that would be an area they'd want to concentrate on and try and protect. But once they're inside that Vons, if they can get through the metal gate that partitions off the pharmacy portion, you know, you're talking about a lot of medications, a lot of drugs that could be accessible to some of these people. And look at that, you know, as fast as you can get in and get some of the merchandise, you run out, you try and get away. And pretty much it's what I saw in 1992. I saw a pickup truck, I mentioned it earlier, come in 4 times to a Circuit City, fill up the back of the truck, come back 4 more times, and just get as much goods as they could, because there's just not enough resources to contain and protect all of these areas. And this seems to be growing, especially in the area, but it's growing in depth as far as the size of the businesses they're looting, what they're getting to. You start to think about a pharmacy that starts to really be concerning.
Yeah, and it is... It's a sad thing because it does take away from the whole point.
Oh boy, hold on a second. Coming to my 12 o'clock, this is what I talked about earlier. I was really concerned about this. This is going to be a real big issue. Come to 12 o'clock with a camera, push into the smoke. If this is a fire and it doesn't look like a smoke grenade, this is going to be an issue.
That's a fire.
And what happens is if a building like this catches on fire, access is an issue in Santa Monica. You just don't have a lot of access. You got a lot of high rises. And once a fire takes off, you got all these cars on the street. You got pedestrians out. You got the police that have to try and focus their attention to get the fire department in. And this can take off quickly. It can expand to other buildings. This could really be an issue. I know when we saw the fire department respond initially, and in Chad, if you could tell me that intersection, my sky map is down, 4th and Santa Monica Boulevard. Originally, when they responded, I thought, oh, my goodness, if there's a fire, we're really going to be in trouble. Now, it's hard to tell, David, I don't know if you can tell, if we're looking at a car that is on fire next to the structure, that would be better than the structure, but certainly would have the potential to spread to that structure, and that would really be a problem.
It's clearly coming through the trees, but it could be either or. Is this not, Scott, directed at you, is this not the same place where we saw the fire department respond to earlier today, about an hour or 2 ago?
I don't believe it's the exact same place. They came around this corner.
Scott. It looks like it's coming out of the window of the building. It looks like the second floor, or if this building has an attic, it looks like that is on fire.
And you could see the people running out of the building next to it.
Oh, looters.
Oh, goodness.
The looters just trying to get out right there. I can't tell what that business is. A jewelry store, possibly.
Jewelry.
Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier. The jewelry stores are a little more difficult to get into. They're usually really boarded up well, but as people started to watch this, you know, more and more of them may have responded with whatever they needed to break in. And now you're talking about valuables when you think about the merchandise that they can get out of a jewelry store, just what that might be worth. I can't quite tell if it's in the structure, but it appears that it may be. And if that is the case, open up out of this shot a moment. I just want to give folks...
I think it's the building. I think it's
I
coming
do
out of the
too.
building.
Oh, it's just such
And,
black smoke.
Let's look at the access issues real quick, Chad, by opening up. I mean, you've got pedestrians running.
Yeah,
You've got
it is
all these cars on the street, and you've got no police in sight, and they're going to have to escort in the fire department.
Okay, this is could be a catastrophic situation because now the concern is not one storefront or one building, but all the buildings that are attached within range of this fire, and it could be a quick burn as it rolls through. Look how tight everything is.
Access.
Okay, there's a red vehicle there to your left-hand side, Scott. So some authority is there watching the situation. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the fire department just rolled in. That hook and ladder is going to be obviously precious right now because once he gets up, he can get some water on that. But if the fire does expand to the point where firefighters can't get inside and they have to take a defensive stance, and if that roof collapses, then this thing is just going to erupt. It will just take off. And, you know, after what we saw, I think it was 2 weeks ago with the firefighters who got trapped on the roof coming down the ladder, you know, they're not all that anxious to jump up on the roof. They don't know what's inside this building. More than likely in a situation like this, they don't have to worry about anything that's extremely flammable. They know what these businesses are. But that's a two-story at least structure right there, if not three, and it'll all be about the entrance team. If they can get inside and put this out, they're going to be able to contain it. If they can't, and it erupts to the point where they can't get inside, then we're going to have a fire that burns for a long time.
Well, and keep in mind, so we're watching this fire, and this is like one of those situations where anywhere you point the camera, Scott, there's something going on. We see, what is this? This is about
look at that.
three or
Tilt
four,
up a little bit.
3 or 4 blocks.
Coming out of the vent.
Coming out of the vents at the top. That's a bad sign,
That's
Scott.
in the attic.
Yeah, and this is right down the street from the Vons that is being looted right now. And keep in mind, in the other direction of Santa Monica is where the protest is going on, and police are trying to deal with that right now. So there are multiple fronts here in this city that is dealing with potential catastrophe.
Yeah, and this fire here, once you saw that smoke come out of the attic portion, if we go and look at the structure as a whole, you got black, almost very dark, maybe black smoke coming out through those vents. That more than likely means that it's spread to the attic or it's gotten inside the vents, the air conditioning vents, whatever the case may be. If we start to see more of that, then this could be a firefight that they have to fight from the outside. And, you know, I mean, you look at this and you know for certain, you would think, I guess, that it's arson. There's no other reason this would start up. But hopefully the entrance team can put it out. If not, it's going to be a long battle. And I tell you what really gets scary, like back in '92, is there were dozens of fires that were set all at the same time, and the whole city looked like a black cloud. At this point, there's only one structure, and we hope we don't see others. But everyone here, all the authorities are really going to have their hands full.
It is. When you're talking about seeing L.A. on fire 28 years ago.
Good sign
Mark
there.
Brown joining me now. It is one of those images that anybody who witnessed the news then, you just saw so many fires.
And we're going to switch now to L.A. County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. It has been a tough few days. We were just hearing from the supervisor. They are following your guidance in putting this curfew into effect county-wide now, 6 o'clock tonight till 6 in the morning. Is it because you're expecting more of the protests that we have seen and more of the violence?
A lot more white smoke than we did that black smoke that was coming out. But, you know, it can change quickly, as I mentioned. So hopefully we'll see them knock this down from the inside, and it won't really take off and get in that attic and consume that entire building. Because if it does, it could spread to others, and then that would really be significant, really be difficult to attack and put out because of the access issues here in Santa Monica.
Yeah, Scott, it looks bad, but hopefully since the firefighters are going to are there, they may be able to get a handle on this fairly quickly. That's the hope anyway. We have our Leanne Suter elsewhere in Santa Monica, not far away from there. She can give us an update from her position. Leanne?
Yeah, Mark, the police line here on Ocean has inched up a little bit more. We are now here at the corner here of where Ocean kind of curves around. You can see they've really cleared out the street, so that is good. The protesters have really moved out. There's a small contingency, I would say, on either side of the roadway here on Ocean, but that big barricade they had made, this is what they were made of. Can I show you right here?
Now he's urging people to stay home, that curfew in place until early tomorrow morning. And we have seen these images of violence in Philadelphia, officers being thrown bricks, Molotov cocktails. It has gotten very violent there in the city. We do know that tonight the National Guard is expected to arrive to help law enforcement contain the situation there in Philly. Tom.
All right, Stephanie Ramos reporting from Lower Manhattan tonight for us. Stephanie, we thank you for that. We want to go to Los Angeles now. Mayor Eric Garcetti issuing an immediate curfew there in the middle of the day. That after days of unrest. Take a look at this. It's an LAPD kiosk in a popular shopping center. It's been set on fire. Now today, business owners and volunteers working to take back their city, cleaning up after nights of unrest.
And yeah, I mean, you just see a handful of people. I also see some folks in an apartment complex off to the side, just standing over there, just watching, kind of watching the show as it's unfolding here, and just seeing what happens. But a handful of protesters also just sitting on the edge of the curb. So for the most part, they've all left here. It's sounding like many of them ended up going around down Olympic and around the other part of the Santa Monica here where there may be other issues going on. I just don't see a huge contingency of protesters here. I did see police end up going around up onto the higher ground here onto this platform to make sure that that was cleared. So they really have done a good job of clearing this area, but where all those protesters went, I am not certain, but I'm sure that they are still in town somewhere at this point, or at least that's what it's sounding like based on all the other issues that we are seeing in other parts of Santa Monica. But that's the latest right here on Ocean. This section stable for right now, but of course these authorities right here, the police right here, will not be leaving this line. The skirmish line will remain in place until they lock the city down.
Streets, which means it allows us to travel from point A to point B as quickly as possible, so that it won't hinder us in doing that. And then if people are going to and from work, they're going to see a doctor, seeking medical care, things like that, we're not worrying about that. We're targeting the people that are in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is looters, rioters, the opportunists, the vandals that are in the areas being impacted. Those are the ones that are going to be subject to the curfew, and they will be arrested.
And Sheriff, we want to talk about that. We were seeing the looting earlier. We saw a lot of people trying to cover up their license plates, but obviously not everyone was successful in that. Is there any kind of deterrence? I mean, can you prosecute after the fact? Can you what message could you send to those people who are just using the protest as an excuse to commit crimes?
Oh, we definitely can prosecute. We don't prosecute after the fact. We just gather the evidence when we make the arrest. We use a reasonable suspicion to make a detention. Once we get all our preliminary investigation, we determine based on probable cause that the crime occurred and they're the ones that did it. Then they get arrested, and we present the case to the district attorney for prosecution. And we will be doing that in significant numbers.
And tell us, you have a wide area to cover, and so you have incidences that are happening in these different places. How are your deputies holding out?
They're holding out pretty well.
To get into these areas, to put these things out before they really spread. I mean, resources become very, very thin, and then you have to protect the firefighters when you're dealing with a crowd that maybe has already taken a shot at patrol officers. So in situations like this, it's getting very dicey, it's getting frightening. We hope that this starts to calm down, but it looks like the trend right now is that things are getting heated. We're seeing fires start, we're seeing cars on fire, buildings on fire, and a complete grocery store, Vaughn's, and a pharmacy looted, and it looks like that was going to be gutted in no time with looters. And then now you see this vehicle on fire next to what we believe is a civic center, and I believe that is a motor officer pulling in there. I can't quite tell. No, it's just a motorcycle. So it's tough. It's a tough situation to try and contain, and right now, for the most part, it's fully out of control.
Wow, it certainly is. It does look like it's out of control, Chris and Scott. And of course, we know that resources are being diverted into so many places. We are going to switch cities. We're going to move from Santa Monica to Long Beach, where there's a crowd that is gathered there. Let's go to Air 7 HD and Chris Christie, who's overhead with the details. Chris.
Okay, well, we've lost audio with Chris Christie, but what you're looking at there is a very large crowd of demonstrators over in Long Beach.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now, Chris. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yep, we're just pulling up on the scene of this one. Looking at downtown Long Beach at the intersection of Ocean Boulevard and Pine Avenue, a crowd of several hundred now gathered in the intersection here. There is not a large police presence, at least visible in this shot or in the extremities of this intersection, but you can see they have gathered very peacefully and are protesting at the intersection. They are blocking traffic, which has come to a halt here and is definitely disrupted, but it does appear to be a peaceful protest. However, we are now under a curfew, so I guess by nature this is an unlawful assembly. We will see how law enforcement prepares to manage the situation. Obviously, you don't want to see protesters in any capacity coming into close proximity with drivers and motorists. Tempers can flare and miscalculations are often made. We've just seen it too many times. So this is a situation that is developing right now here in Long Beach, again, the intersection of Ocean Boulevard and Pine Avenue.
Yeah, where are the police right now? Are the police nearby? Are they forming a skirmish line anywhere nearby?
No, they aren't. We don't have it in our shot. We haven't been able to find them. They might be on the, they might be monitoring this. Obviously, they're monitoring this, but they aren't visible. They aren't making themselves visible. Perhaps they are giving this crowd a chance to breathe and do as they please, exercising restraint, exercising patience, and deciding to not agitate them with an overwhelming presence. But I got to look. I got to be honest. As I look around,
there was singing and praying and people coming together. Diverse groups. She said they really wanted to come and channel pain into some positive action, and that so far has been the temperature of the day. So they're getting close to come up on Andrew Young Boulevard there and Centennial Olympic Park. So they're getting close to all meet as one group. And the timing of this is interesting, Jennifer. So they're getting close to, where the iconic Olympic rings are there from 1996 there at the park is where they're all coming together. And the timing on this, I think, is interesting as we're 40 minutes from the curfew. As we've been talking about how it's been far more organized today. And you wonder if there has been some decision to meet in one place here as the curfew draws closer.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we can get back to where the group was that was on the move, because this does appear to be the main point that we have seen near Centennial Olympic Park on Marietta.
Hits two people there as it was going forward. Then as it backed up, it nearly hit some more people, and the officer took off. So the question is, why was he going into that group of people? What made him feel that was him or her, the officer, feel that was necessary? And why were people compelled to throw objects at that cruiser? There was a lot going on in that, and that's pretty shocking video, though.
It is shocking. We have so many images right now. I'm trying to take a closer look at it because we're just sort of all looking at some of these images for the first time.
There was zero need to do that. People are literally standing in front of you. Why accelerate? Why accelerate forward into them when you didn't have to?
And then accelerate backwards
and going
reverse
backward
so quickly. Yeah. I know tensions are high. But that's
oh my God.
Yeah, that's video that's very disturbing. And then backing up without any regard for who's behind you, and you can see people because you obviously had those cameras behind you.
That's an officer who's going to have to do some explaining, and
have to answer that.
I think if you or I were to do that, there would be a charge. there would be a criminal charge.
There's
correct?
no doubt about it.
Because you've got, if you see a bunch of people in front of you, is there a reason then to continue forward?
Charge?
If you have a place to go to get away, you don't have to turn down that street.
No.
And
absolutely not. No, that's
I'm
very
confused as to
and
why
the,
he
and the,
felt compelled to accelerate
cruiser
forward.
is stopped. It's not like he was in the process, she was in the process of turning. They're stopped.
Yeah, they were stopped. They were sitting there.
Anyway, all right. Well, we are going to be moving on to Redlands. A loud but peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. Demonstrators held a sit-in while others marched through the streets. They chanted slogans, including "No justice, no peace, I can't breathe," some of the last words spoken by George Floyd as he was restrained by officers in Minnesota. Organizers say they coordinated with Redlands police, and the chief expressed his support for their right to protest.
We came together because we felt like Black Lives Matter.
Laying on the ground again. This is a kind of protest we have seen in many parts of the country today.
Yeah, and that's that group again that we had seen marching throughout Midtown. Yes, and so it appears that for whatever part of their protest, they have sat down right there. That's just a few short blocks away from Centennial Olympic Park. If you were following along with the chopper shot there, it moved from there over to where that main area is. Let's try to get you back out to Rebecca Lindstrom now, who is not far, I believe, from that main location. We are again seeing some people run there. Rebecca, you're over there near Centennial Olympic Park. What are you seeing?
You can definitely tell that the mood has changed out here. It was almost instantaneous. So without being in the middle of the crowd, it's impossible to know exactly what started it. I'm going to back off to the side here. As you can see, people reacting quickly anytime the police are taking action against them, not wanting anything, not wanting to get hurt, but still wanting to be here and be present and be heard. The mood, people will run even if there isn't something being thrown, tear gas, fireworks, just to get away from it. So you're constantly looking at all directions to see what's happening.
Every time you get on Twitter, every time you say anything, sir, you're saying it out of violence, out of hate. And we are tired of being hated. We are tired of fearing. We are tired of walking out every day and not being sure if we're going to walk back home.
Yeah, now the two fires look pretty good. The car fire next to the Civic Center appears to be out, and the structure fire at Santa Monica Boulevard and 4th appears to be out. But they raided this Chase Bank. I'm not certain what they could have gotten, but there were a group, several dozen, that ran into this area. You see all the cars are stopped. There's several stores that were ransacked as well. And moments ago, we saw a big group come to this area, and that's why we focused in on this spot. But I want to show you, as we tilt up with the camera, there's a large group starting to form and march down. Let me give you the street here. I think it's going to be right there in your screen, Chad, as you tilt in. There you go. You can see several hundred people, and they're coming southbound on, let's see if I can get that street, 6th and coming towards Wilshire right now. So this is a group that has sort of popped up all of a sudden, coming southbound towards that area of downtown Santa Monica that they've really been trying to contain and to stop. So once the police really takes a look at what they have here, we're probably going to have another skirmish line and try and stop them from continuing down towards this area they're really trying to cordon off. And it exploded into so many different areas. It's become so hard to contain. There's all these little spots where we have people looting and groups gathering that it's becoming extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the police to stay ahead of this thing.
All right. All right. We were trying to deal with some things in here. So this is a peaceful, so far, this march at least appears peaceful. It's striking to see, Colleen, how others had split off from the peaceful march and just decided to do their own thing and conduct the lawlessness, and then the peaceful march continued. We are, of course, continuing our ongoing coverage of the
that out. Unfortunately, it has not spread to that building right now as they work on the last flames there. There are some folks in the area that are taking pictures of what's going on here, but again, this fire, and it's unknown how it started, but again, a car fire fully engulfed, and they're able to start to get the knockdown on it right now.
Okay, and as we're looking at this picture right now of this car burning right now, we understand that the President of the United States has been taken to an underground bunker right now by Secret Service. So we're getting more information on that. This is at the White House. We know we've seen protests out there, as we have seen across the nation. So that happened a few nights ago when people were there. Of course, they're not going to get on the property, we hope, of the White House. But yes, that's the information that we are getting right now, that he has been taken on Friday to an underground bunker there at the White House. So it's NBC News reporting that to us. So we wanted to go ahead and pass that along to you as we continue to cover the situation that's happening right now in Santa Monica. When we were on with Conan, we were talking about, is this a police car? It does not appear to be. I don't know whose vehicle this was, but firefighters were quick to get the water on that, and they got that out, Jonathan.
They did. They got it out pretty quickly, and as Gil mentioned, thankfully, before it caught the building on fire.
Right now, he's been over Santa Monica for much of the afternoon, watching this all unfold, both the peaceful protest and the elements, the criminal activity that has also been going on. Scott, what can you show us right now?
Well, we have a group of people coming down Wilshire, pretty much north of where we saw all the looting. And although they appear to be peaceful at this point in time, you know, the word has gone out. There is a curfew. You have to leave. The helicopter overhead from LAPD has a loudspeaker telling everyone to disperse. So it's an unlawful demonstration at this point, even though this crowd appears to be peaceful. And it's hard to say where they're headed. It looks like they're turning down 7th Street, actually onto Lincoln. And basically they're coming down right down into that hot spot that we had earlier.
Again today, and you can hear the protests, even though they've now moved to the other side of Lafayette Park, and we're certainly not at the highest level at this moment, but you can tell that the service has certainly stepped up security, all elements of security around the White House.
John, real quick, because we got to get to a break, but I want to ask you.
We are now under 30 minutes from the curfew taking place. We are 29 minutes from the curfew taking place, and just in the last 5 minutes, the tone of this group has changed dramatically. Just this confrontation between this line, the skirmish line of police officers and some of the protesters. It started with some objects being thrown towards the police officers, and then the police officers starting to advance in their formation as they've made their way about a half city block already to this point. Now they're regrouping back in formation. This is all happening right there on the edge, you see, of Centennial Olympic Park, and that had been where 3 different group of protesters were all kind of converging and heading to one place together within the last 20 minutes or so, and we've seen a little bit of tear gas and smoke exchanged. Let's get a vantage point from a street view. Brendan Keefe is down there. Brendan, you have covered a lot of these kind of situations over a couple of decades. Give me your perspective.
Zooming back up Capitol. You can see there's more officers down toward the Tower Bridge.
He has to say about what they're going to do about these roving bands of people who've been looting stores, and what are they going to do about with regard to traffic control or maintaining some sort of control over the folks who are now sitting down blocking an intersection.
Well, we do know that curfew went into effect in Santa Monica at 4 p.m., so a lot of people have been dispersed, and we saw Leanne Suter. She was right there where there was a very large crowd that had taken like center stage, and they have been dispersing. So, and we are over downtown LA on your right-hand side of your screen. We can go to Chris Christie, and he can give us an update of what he's seeing right there. Chris?
Colleen, a dramatic shot here at LA City Hall. Several hundred have now gathered directly in front of the steps at City Hall. They are peaceful protesters respecting the barricade that has been set up by the National Guard. You can see several lines of LAPD officers behind them, the National Guard soldiers backing them up. As I look up Spring Street, there's also a whole line of Humvees that are keeping them south of the intersection here. So you can
footing here. You can see most of the crowd has actually gone up. Charles Holmes, star photojournalist here, getting the shot as we zoom in. You can see they're marching up toward the rest of the crowd. So this is heading up toward CNN Center, toward Marietta Street, and they are on the move and they are on the march. For safety reasons, we're not marching with them, just out of an abundance of caution. But again, this group has not shown, this particular group has not shown any predilection towards violence or any kind of, it's all been about peace and love and harmony, but also sort of getting the message out that people are not happy. One more thing I want to tell you is we are minutes now away, a little more than 20 minutes away from the curfew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for a few minutes. I just wanted to reiterate that the City of Santa Monica and the Santa Monica Police Department is here to support peaceful protests, but will not stand for civil unrest and criminal behavior. The Santa Monica Police Department, in coordination with our area law enforcement partners, are actively working in the city.
Por favor, que protesten en paz. Ahorita tenemos la ciudad única de Los Ángeles a todos.
Completely ignoring the public health recommendations. Around the country, you have African Americans who are being cited by police officers, who are being dragged physically off of buses, who are not being allowed to enter places because they had masks on. One of my colleagues in Congress told me about a situation in New York where on one side of the city, police officers saw white sunbathers in a park. They handed them masks. The same city, the same day, on the other side of town, they were giving citations to black and brown folks.
Crackers lighting up across the lanes of that road there.
Yeah.
And so this has shifted quite a bit right now.
It's like building a barricade in anticipation of a standoff as that group of police officers moves down this road. Yeah, pulling anything they can from the park.
Materials
construction
had been in the area.
Sawhorse.
And we know again that the
and you know, ladies, this is going to make it. I was just going to say this is going to make it very difficult for the officers if you have a barricade where you have the agitators who are, or the protesters who are concealing themselves behind that. Now the officers have to figure out who's throwing what and where is it coming from as they continue to approach that barricade. And we've seen many times before in them, and hopefully it doesn't happen, where someone will grab, as you can see, they're grabbing things from this construction site here, where they'll try to set a fire to increase that barricade, to increase that distance between them and the police officers. So they are ripping everything from that construction site, trying to get it in front of the officers to prevent them from approaching. Eventually, once we pull out wide, we'll see this armored vehicle that they have up front to try to penetrate that barricade.
And it does appear that the crowd that is back there behind this makeshift barricade is throwing things as well. We don't see the officers, any of the law enforcement presence on the other side as of yet, but they are throwing things. As Ron mentioned, they are going into that construction area, what appears to be a construction site, and removing just about anything from that area and bringing it. There are several porta potties that look like they have been placed on their sides there that have been drug over, in addition to some partitions that were likely meant to keep people out of the construction
site. Yes.
That have now been drug into the streets there. The street lights have come on. We are almost 20 minutes away from the curfew in the city of Atlanta, and this situation has been deteriorating over the last few moments here.
It's interesting.
But this is the dilemma that maybe the dilemma for the protesters.
Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead,
No, I want to hear your perspective, Ron.
As
a former law enforcement officer, I really want to hear what you have to say.
This may be a dilemma for the protesters here. Yeah, this is maybe a dilemma for the protesters and what they're trying to accomplish by setting up that barrier. I'm quite sure that whoever's in the command center, they already know exactly what's taking place. There may be some other officers, National Guards, personnel that may come from the rear of that barricade as well, to be able to take on those protesters. So the barricade may mean nothing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Ron, go ahead.
Okay, let's go straight to Rebecca Lindstrom. I guess she has police activity right now. Rebecca?
Yes, we've been trying to walk around and take a look at exactly what has happened in the past few moments. They have very successfully dispersed the large crowd into smaller chunks. Now we're waiting to see what happens with those different chunks.
To be fairly peaceful, but as the officers start to move forward and tell them and make them leave, that's when you see these altercations. So good news that fire is out, but it really did show you the kind of resources they really need to extend in order to be able to get the fire crews in there and put the fire out. So it can be extremely difficult.
As it's maybe a pharmacy that people have just broken into and are continuing to loot. They're going in and out. We're noticed that we're looking for the area where there's a lot of cars. We'll see the cars pulling up here, and that tips us off for any area that's being looted. And sure enough, they're doing the same routine, pulling up to the curbside, dropping off people, and they come back out like this person is doing right now with goods, and then taking them right to the cars and getting in the back seat. So that's what we're seeing here. I believe it's a pharmacy. I'll have to get more comfort.
It is a pharmacy. It is called Tritech Pharmaceuticals, at least according to Google Maps, and that's what you're seeing people breaking into. And of course, this is a good distance from 4th Street, where we've been seeing the primary looting today, Gil. Police, I'm assuming, not in this area yet.
They're not at all. They're dealing with the smaller group down Broadway towards the beach, and you're seeing more and more people filtering out of that pharmacy right now. People coming out with a lot of product and departing. We're going to slide right, Jim, to get a little closer to the scene. But you see more and more people coming across the street, parking in different areas, and running into the store. The windows, it looks like the front door has already been shattered. I'll come in a little closer. You can see the glass on the ground there. Very typical of what we've been seeing yesterday and today as well.
And what's so typical we've been seeing for a few days is that method of operation where they use cars and they can move around quickly. They use the car, they drive right up like they're picking up goods, go in, grab stuff, throw it in the car maybe a couple times, and then drive off. And then earlier today, Gil, we saw cars with their license plates covered so that police could not get their license plate. And we saw someone who was actually ripping that off. He got assaulted by someone for trying to do an act of good, trying to take that cover off.
Yeah, that was very dramatic. We were worried about that bicyclist as he pulled that cloth off the rear license plate of that vehicle, and the suspect's inside the car jumping out and trying to beat the guy on the bicycle. He was able to get away and break free, fortunately, but time after time we're seeing more of this happening with the cars pulling up, and that is a good indication for us up in the air. We can spot that pretty easy. We look for those cars. Now look at, there's a couple of guys running off here, and it's probably because there's law enforcement on their way.
And Gil, as we say with your shot, we want to let our viewers know that on the right side of your screen, there's some ground video, looks like cell phone video of the sake house there in Santa Monica near 3rd Street Promenade on fire at one point today. It's unclear because this is not a live shot about what the status is of that place, but set fire, we're assuming, by the people who've been breaking into these stores, and that's just an unfortunate situation, Kathy, as we've been seeing firefighters also having trouble getting into these areas because their own safety is at risk, and there's not enough, law enforcement support to help them put out all of these spot fires that we keep seeing.
Yeah, in certain situations, they might need protection. They might need police to go in first and clear the way. I don't know how blocked the streets are there, but yeah, we saw that one fire. And we also saw that car that was torched, that vehicle earlier, just go up in flames. So we've seen a couple of fires here and there. Nothing like we saw last night, and hopefully it won't happen, but we're 15 minutes away from the countywide curfew going into effect, and yet we're still seeing these businesses here that you see right here on the left-hand side of your screen being looted. A couple of them there, Jonathan and Gil, where we saw cars driving up and people coming out and taking what they could.
It is jarring video when we're seeing these businesses in that coordinated effort to loot stores. But it is refreshing to see when people do get their comeuppance on that. These poor businesses are suffering so much since they've been closed for so long.
Zachary, you've covered a lot of stories dealing with racial injustice, not just for our network, but throughout your entire career. I'm going to assume right now that what you're seeing and what you've been seeing doesn't surprise you. The amount of anger, the outrage after what happened with George Floyd, that video surfacing, and physically what happened to that man who was in police custody and dying while on the floor.
Yeah, I was there in Baltimore. I've been at several other of these protests, but more so than that, Tom. And you and I do this together. We do this. We're in this business. We tell the stories day in and day out, the videos of people getting pulled out of cars or people calling the cops on folks because they're black or
I tell you what, ladies, even though we're just 15 minutes away from the curfew, as you can see, the conflict has already begun, and it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen once the National Guard, APD, and those mutual aid officers come into contact with those barriers and the protesters who are actually trapped in between those two barriers as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ron, because we did see that initial barrier, and then we saw some people kind of go around it on the sidewalk and kind of go back towards the location where Rebecca is. And as it's getting darker, it's harder to see. We're now 15 minutes about from the curfew here in Atlanta. And it does seem that there's maybe a second barrier.
Yeah, they have built a second barrier now.
Being made from, again, that construction material at that site there. So it looks like there's one at one point in the street and another that is a couple of feet up away.
They see so many people so close to each other, and I'm sure we've done so much work to try to stay safe. So we can only hope that it's not going to be a big spike, but I guess again we will find out in the next couple of weeks what this weekend has brought for COVID-19 cases, since there is so much more testing available.
Right, and Scott, are you
ready to respond? They're probably going to fire pepper spray. They're going to throw tear gas canisters, and they're going to be on the move here quite quickly, especially those officers who are up front and ready to take on any confrontation with the shields, with the helmets, and also the full body armor. But they are ready to act as soon as they put on those gas masks.
And this shot that we're looking at right now on Andrew Young International, that again is as well just in that midway point between the original protest and where people were setting up those barricades. We see some folks running away from that area right now from this sky tracker view. Not clear where they're going, but they're running to the side of the street that appears to be open with regular traffic coming down it, running down this side street here. So again, that's Nassau
Street,
so
right by Skyview there.
Some folks run that way, but again, that is another view of that barrier that the protesters have created from various materials and items that they were able to find in the area.
So the perspective is that's a Keenan building, so that's Nassau, and then Centennial Olympic Drive, right where the base of Skyview is. And the one on the very lowest, it's kind of under the banner there, is the first one that they constructed. A couple of porta potties that they put on their sides and a couple of fencing materials. And then the one higher up that we just passed over were different items from that construction site, pieces of wood and fencing and metal.
agitators and not part of the larger peaceful demonstrations. Duckett is part of Black Lives Matter and says that their message is one of peaceful resistance. She does not condone this violence. However, she says she does understand the anger and
they can go elsewhere, and that's what police would prefer to do, is just, get everybody out of there. They don't want to have to arrest every single person there. That's a lot of diversion of manpower. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of resources that would be, devoted just to that, which the department doesn't want to do. Now, are these? I'm looking at the uniforms here of the folks who've just shown up. Is that sheriff's deputies there? Are those highway patrol officers? Who are those folks in the khaki?
I believe what you're looking at is LA County Sheriff's deputies making that line right there in the gray, and then LAPD officers behind them, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I haven't seen the presence of the National Guard. It seems like a situation. I realize, that's really a tricky thing to do, to deploy them out into the city. It seems like they'd be most effective to just shut down streets that have already been cleared by the police so nobody comes in behind them. But I haven't seen any of that. But I believe those are LA County Sheriff's deputies and LAPD officers.
I see. Okay, so it's a mutual aid situation here in the city of Santa Monica. I haven't done a search yet to find out how many officers there are in Santa Monica, but there can't be nearly enough to deal with a protest of this size and the amount of lawlessness that we have seen just this afternoon. So they are going to need help. They are going to need mutual aid.
Of anxiety, the frustration that people are going through. And I think, this is wrong. It may be wrong on many levels, but buildings can be restored. How do you restore?
Officers, but the crowd there gathering again ahead of the line of police that has mobilized and moved further down the street. Just about 10 minutes now from the curfew starting here in Atlanta for a second night. We have been mentioning throughout the evening that it appears as if there has been a more of an effort to make sure that people know about this curfew. An alert went out
to the people who are doing the looting. But until they can really contain and do the crowd control things that they're charged with doing right now, they can't do any of that. So we're going to continue on occasion to see those images of looting and people setting fires. That fire is still burning there in the middle of the intersection, and that is, just something that we have been seeing. A couple buildings have been torched in Santa Monica.
Cars.
Right.
Cars, and so yes, they're definitely. There's quite a few people who are absolutely not adhering to the curfew. It's almost 2 hours in effect right there. But always good to have your fire extinguisher there, and hopefully, I don't know.
People of goodwill showing up to do something about it.
I believe so. That don't appear to be firefighters or police officers. So there's some in the crowd that are saying, hey, let's stop this and put that out. One interesting thing I was thinking about what would happen today compared to yesterday, and thinking about, well, Sunday might be a little calmer. Sunday is a little more of a day that isn't, people aren't out quite as late because they're going to work on Monday. But it doesn't seem that that may be the case. And one of the reasons maybe is that, that unemployment rate with the pandemic is so high. It's not at 3%. It's probably, by the time they compute it, over 10%. And that's a lot of people that, aren't having to wake up tomorrow morning and go to work. And that could make a Sunday, just as volatile as a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. We're going to check in now via Skype. We have Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the LA Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for joining us, Ms. Salinas. One of the things
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been talking about for the last 24 hours or so is that, we were just reopening. We were just getting there. And now businesses are having to close. Some of them are being looted. Some of them are being damaged. And the reopening has been pushed back for a lot of folks.
It's so unfortunate that we find ourselves in this situation. At the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, we've been working with businesses, many small businesses, mom and pop businesses.
We kind of did see some of the crowd dispersing and moving away possibly some people deciding it was time to go home as we got closer and closer to the 9 p.m. curfew. From our various reporters that have been out there asking people in the crowds if they were going to leave and abide by that curfew. Many people, it seemed, of the people they spoke with, people didn't want to commit to a solid yes or no. And so here we are again, about 7 minutes out from the start of the curfew, and we're seeing more action from law enforcement. It does appear as if they are mobilizing. As you mentioned, Cheryl, we haven't really seen any arrests thus far that we have seen ourselves. And so it'll be something to watch to see if that changes once we move past this 9 o'clock hour.
And it is helpful just a moment ago as our helicopter gave that vantage point, Ron, to kind of a wider perspective, because you see the layers of what's happening. You see the large vehicles as a layer, and the National Guard as another layer, and then the police as another layer, but it also
So, we want to see what they're doing, where they're going, where they are focusing their attention right now, as, certain groups here have chosen not to go home. Okay, so they are lining up right now. We'll see what they're going to do. We've seen them firing the rubber bullets. We've seen them firing tear gas, trying to disperse that one group. But now they're in front of this area where people are throwing things on this, trying to get it to burn, and it's smoking right now.
And you wonder if they're trying to kind of surround them and remind them again that this curfew in the city of Santa Monica took place almost 2 hours ago. So anybody outside, it's all considered unlawful. It gives them more leeway in making arrests. We see the zip ties. They seem prepared to start making arrests, though they're not doing anything active right now. But you wonder what their strategy is, if they're now trying to kind of corral these people into one place so that they can really try to perhaps arrest them, or just try to get them to disperse.
Well, Jonathan, talk about arrests. The LAPD say they arrested nearly 400 people last night after businesses were vandalized, looted, and burned in the Fairfax district. And NBC4's I-Team has been gathering new information about who was locked up in recent days, and we have
disturbing. But let me just say, first and foremost, the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce supports the right for peaceful protest. And this tragic death of Mr. George Floyd just shows the injustices that we face. But let's not confuse vandalism with peaceful demonstrations for systematic change.
Okay,
these are disturbing images.
We're going to have to interrupt you there. We have a camera down there in Long Beach. We're not sure what the business is that was being looted, but the police showed up. They've got tear gas, less than lethal weapons. A bunch. You see all the
there was
folks
a
just
crush
flying.
of people flying out of this store, banging into the law enforcement. It really, the law enforcement, they were taken by surprise by everybody just dashing out, dashing around. I didn't see one person taken into custody.
No, but now at least they've got the store cleared, and they're standing guard outside the. There might be there's people inside still, and like they're trying to bust out through the boarded up, through the boards. Is that what that is?
I think that's exactly what it is. They're trying to get out, and those.
Look at that! Look at that! This is bizarre.
It's unreal. Look at those windows. People
They're trying to escape.
They're trying to escape. They might be taking it.
Look at that!
Look at this.
This is insane. I cannot believe what I'm looking at. I don't know if there are officers inside the store trying to apprehend people, but there are officers that stood there outside the store as people fled. These are folks trying to flee. Look at that, still grabbing it. Now 50 feet away, not even from that, this guy that just grabbed up all those clothes, there's where these officers are. They're not arresting anybody at this point. And who are these people standing in between the looters and the police?
Now everyone's trying to take the plywood off.
Wow.
Those were
I've never seen that before.
Images.
Never seen that before.
Hearing that noise, at first you thought it was the non-lethal bullets at first, until you could tell it's knocking.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal.
Wow. I am just absolutely amazed at what I'm seeing. We saw, again, we were in the middle of an interview, We got Santa Monica police showing up to this store that had been boarded up, but it was being looted. They walked up to the entrance. A bunch of people fled out of the store. I'm sorry, Long Beach, excuse me. This is Long Beach, where a bunch of people just fled right out of the store, right past those officers. They didn't apprehend any of them, but they did basically stop more people from coming in. They stood guard in a ring outside that entrance, but clearly there were people still inside, and those people busted through the boarded up windows and glass, climbed over it, and fled. Some of them throwing the stuff that they had stolen
on the
and
ground and
grabbing
then
it
collecting it
and taking off.
Right. We don't know what this business is. Again, we obviously.
Yeah, if our cameraman can hear us, it's Urban Outfitters.
Wow.
Urban Outfitters. Urban Outfitters got looted in the Fairfax district yesterday. So it's interesting that they seem to be going after the same sorts of stores. Well, this is the second Urban Outfitters in 24 hours that I know of.
It's the crime of opportunity. They're just so big.
Mm-hmm.
Such a big store, has so much inside.
Unbelievable. Well, it continues, and at least we're seeing a police presence there, and there's an effort being made to stop the looting, if not to arrest the looters. But at least if somebody was planning to loot and then set a fire, they put a stop to that. And it's just an astounding thing to watch. Oh, it was a Cavalli designer suit warehouse that the people were in here that had been boarded up. We're going to transfer now. I've got David Ono just coming in.
Thank you, Mark. And Colleen, I'm joined by Veronica Miracle as we continue to make this transition. And it's an incredible site that you guys did an amazing job with. And it says so much about what our communities, multiple communities, are having to deal with in this crisis. So all day long, we had been seeing looting going on in Santa Monica. And there we go.
Look at this. Look at that.
These
They're
are
just
live
so brazen.
images
So
from
brazen.
the ground. And Veronica, this is exactly what we saw happening in Santa Monica, but now it's happening in Long Beach.
Right. And again, it's always this small group of people who are really ruining it for.
Looks like they're just standing there right for now, but the bulk of the group here, as I come out to a wider shot, you'll see the line of officers there right at the intersection, more officers coming in behind them, and they continue to make that slow push from 4th Street, where that Vans store was being looted earlier, here on Broadway, up to 5th so far.
These protesters that are still out there, a handful of signs still out there, but people remaining to mill in the streets, and now we're seeing them take off running once again. Not sure why. I don't see any smoke in the distance there. If there is, it's a small amount, but we are seeing some of the folks running. But again, when we do see people run, it seems people run and then they slowly make their way back to their
Unaccosted by the police. They simply ran by them and got out of the area. We didn't see a single attempt to stop them from looting in Santa Monica because, quite frankly, the police had so many things going on in that community. They had priorities, and stopping looters was not one of the priorities, quite clearly. We watched that happen for quite some time there in multiple places in Santa Monica. Now we see Long Beach, where we just saw that scene where suddenly a stack of Long Beach police officers go into a storefront, and then you see the panic from the looters. We didn't see any arrests, Veronica.
No arrests.
But we did at least see a police presence, and that presence alone at least forced the looters out of that store and left whatever merchandise that was left in it.
I think, yeah, that was so startling to see them busting through the window and climbing over that plywood. Just remarkable sights here. We want to bring you the update on the latest that's happening in our area. So there's a delicate situation in Santa Monica where those protests continue despite a city curfew that went into effect at 4 p.m. As police try to clear the streets and prepare to make arrests, looting continues. At least one fire broke out inside a store as vandals ran out. Now, a Los Angeles County-wide curfew is now in effect at this hour, and it's going to be in place until 6 a.m. tomorrow. So if you're outside right now, you are breaking the law. In downtown LA, the National Guard has taken position at City Hall. A large group of protesters has gathered there, so far very peaceful. Protesters are also gathered in Long Beach in violation of the curfew that we were just showing you. They're blocking traffic, and there is looting now underway, as you just saw.
Right, so it's an incredible scene. Leanne Suter now, she joins us from the ground in Santa Monica. Leanne has been watching a lot of back and forth between protesters and police. What's the situation like right now?
David and Veronica, we've moved in past 3rd Street Promenade. I want to give you a look at some of the damage from that looting. Also, I'll give you a live look in a second of a skirmish line that is very active right now. But take a look over my shoulder here. I think you guys watched this live from the helicopter. This is the Van store at the corner of 4th and Broadway. You can see that the looters actually just propped the doors open and just went in and grabbed anything that they could find. The street out here is littered with boxes of all of the shoes that were left behind by all of the looters that ran inside grabbing whatever they could. Over here you can see that there's a jewelry store. They completely smashed out the window, lifted up the metal gate that is supposed to protect that. Every one of the counters I can see inside, all of the cases shattered. If there was anything in there, it is gone. There is not much left inside there, a lot of glass. You can see where they used even bicycles, it appeared, smashing through there to try to get inside. But this is what we're talking about down the road here. This is at Broadway. This remains a very active scene right here. This is where SWAT is in a standoff right now at 5th and Broadway with the protesters on this side. So they've cleared out a large section of the inner area of Santa Monica, I would say around Broadway, Colorado, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. That has all been cleared. They kind of keep pushing them to the east here, and you can see that we're in a standoff with folks right now. I see a lot of the protesters that have kind of climbed up on some of this construction scaffolding, the wooden barriers there around that construction area. I can see a lot of them gathered up there, and the SWAT team is in place here. Now, this is the Sheriff's Department helping out Santa Monica here. You can see them getting set up. And a couple of moments ago, I heard them, it sounded like they were using some non-lethal measures. In the middle of the street, that is where they had tried to set that fire. Looks like straw or debris or something that they set on fire. You see it's been doused. I see a bunch of water bottles in there. Here's something else I see. If you can see this, Bill, in the front, it appears that these might have been 2 of the things thrown by the crowds. I know they have been doing that with a couple of things where they've thrown fire extinguishers to them. Yeah, so I see they're going to push this crowd back. I'm going to move us up to the middle of the street because I want to give you a shot down 5th. Turn to the left there, Bill. There's got another skirmish line going down 5th. That would be, I believe, at 5th and Colorado is where that one is. And I just heard them flashbang or something go off down on that end as they're trying to push the folks out of on that side of this protest. But again, you can see them just literally in a face-off, face-to-face with police as they are pushing them back ever so slowly.
Leanne,
just forcing them back. Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, we have your picture up in Santa Monica.
Watch out, watch out, watch out.
Yep, go ahead. Okay, we have your picture up in Santa Monica as those law enforcement officers move closer to the protests, and then on the other side of our screen, we have Long Beach, where Urban Outfitters was being looted, and there's still people going in and out, not at this exact moment, but we've been watching. The police seem to just walk away from that.
The police have left. Now, this is how quickly things change. So just minutes ago, you saw a police presence there as the store was being looted. Those police have left. As the police left, the looters came back and immediately started going back into the store and taking things from that store. There they are on the corner, but it's been figured out that their goal is not to make any arrests right now. So what we want to show you, as Leanne continues to show you this situation on your left-hand side, we want to show you what happened 5 minutes ago in Long Beach. Just as a store was being broken into and being looted, Long Beach police suddenly showed up, and there was
of those who are still out there remaining, moving away or trying to leave at this point. And so it does pretty much seem to be a standoff right now.
Last night, Atlanta police made 157 arrests. And Chief Shields said in a press conference today that they were ready to make arrests as needed. And her thought was they needed to do that for the safety of everyone involved, for protesters, for police, and also to prevent further damage in the city as well. So 157 arrests
and
last
we're seeing
night.
them run off again.
Yep, now they're starting to run again.
What happened, if something was thrown or if there was, not sure, but that did look to be a significant portion of the people that were gathered right there that just took off and ran down the road there. But again, what we have seen is
but just like a
they'll
wave,
run and come back.
you know,
exactly.
like a wave in the sea, they just go right back. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For it to get out, and they threw some clothing out. But it sounds like things are picking up where you are, Leanne.
I'm sorry, we are right in here. You can see them there. You can hear the crowd chanting here, and they're just ever so forcefully pushing this line of protesters back. It's hard to tell kind of how big the crowd is, but it appears we've got about 100 people or more that are here as they're trying to push them back. I see some, some minor skirmishes. I can see them kind of really, the protesters pushing back against the officers, but so far it is relatively peaceful. The protesters just simply backing up. I've only seen a couple of, I saw some eggs thrown at one point, but other than that, I haven't seen anything else thrown from the protesters. I haven't seen, since we've arrived, the police using any of the non-lethal rounds. I see that they have them on their bodies. Several officers have them, but no one is using. The officers in the very front, the sheriff, it's a combination of police and sheriff's department. They have their batons out. They're just gently pushing them all back. Oh, here comes a glass bottle. Somebody just threw a bottle. Here comes another one. So yeah, now they're throwing stuff. So this is when it turns. So now you can see the crowd starting to run. So that's the problem. When they start throwing things, that's when things really take a turn for the worse, because that's when you'll start to see police. But so far, they aren't doing any action. They aren't taking any action against these protesters. I don't know how far back they're going to push them. But again, it just appears that's the goal. Just ever so slowly pushing, inching them away from downtown Santa Monica here. But you're coming into residential areas, and you can see there are people like up on the top of these apartment buildings just watching what's happening, and seeing what's going to happen next. But I haven't seen, again, any major problems here. You can see most of the protesters have their hands up as they are backing away from the officers as they ever so slowly push them back. But I just don't know how far this will continue, or at what point they will stop, or if the crowd will disperse, or this is going to be a standoff that's going to continue for some time. I hear the police saying that they're going to hold the line right here for now as they try to determine what their next step will be. But this is just a standoff between the two sides. So we've seen that repeatedly throughout Santa Monica here. Earlier today, we saw it on Ocean, where a very large group of protesters.
Charles, can you see this over here? We got some armored vehicles with the National Guard that are now advancing. So you have the National Guard advancing. It looks like they're going to break this line right now because they're going to move. They're moving this way, Charles. We're safe. We're out of it.
I was going to ask you, Brendan, this is Ron Jones. I was just going to ask you, I see that you have a gas mask on, and I can see the troops moving. How difficult is it for you to breathe and operate with that gas mask on?
It's hard. I mean, you're laboring through, this is a HEPA filter, multiple layers of it. This one has been with me through the Iraq War. I wore it in Kuwait in 2003 during the invasion. That's when I first got this gas mask. Then also in Iraq, that was when Scud missiles with chemical weapons were being fired on Kuwait City. I also wore this in Ferguson. So we've got, sorry, we just got some protesters that are trying to get in the camera, which is fine. So,
well, hold on a minute here, Brendan. We're being told that this is near Centennial Park. Is this where this is? What we're looking at right now, Diana?
Yeah, Atlanta police are now
Centennial and Andrew
marching
Young
up the
International,
street.
you can see that the police are moving the protesters through along, and they're using gas at the same time.
Are you with me? Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you, Brendan.
All right, if you guys are still with me, good. Sorry about that. This is Lucky Street. You can see the Waffle House there in the distance. The National Guard is pushing that line forward. This is exactly the same thing that happened last night. Exact same way, same direction and everything. Now look, I'm going to pull the mask back just a little further. Go ahead. Sorry.
Keep going,
Okay,
Brendan.
sorry,
We can hear you.
I just heard you guys interrupted. I apologize. Okay, good. Sorry, folks. Look, I'm going to pull the mask back for just a second. It's got like a little bit of a burn or a crispness to it. It's a very distinct smell. If you've ever been in one of these situations, it burns the eyes, the throat. Right now, it's dissipated enough that I can take the mask back. You can see the National Guard troops are still wearing their masks, so it's very possible that gas will be deployed. And you can see they're regrouping to form a new line right here. Again, we are safe where we are. Not trying to talk about my decades of experience here, but I've been doing 3 decades of protests and
going into a storefront. This appears to be a mall of some sort. Scott Reif is over at Air 7 HD. Scott?
Yeah, David, it's a large mall right in the heart of Long Beach, right off Shoreline, basically between Shoreline and Ocean. And this mall right now is being ransacked. That Gap was completely gutted. It looked like the Hot Topic. You have looters going in, and what looks like happening here is there's little to no police presence. So we just pulled up on scene. We left Santa Monica. We're now in downtown Long Beach, right off the shoreline. But if we open up out of this shot, you're sort of seeing it with me. We just pulled up moments ago, and we don't see police presence here at all. So if this started as a protest and a march, we didn't really see that. This looks like this was just a bunch of people who swarmed into this area and started going through this entire shopping center. If you tilt up, it looks like right in there somebody is already trying to board up the windows to try and keep them out of some of the stores that are inside. Of course, there's a lot of stores that the front door is to the outside. There's a lot of apartments in this same area, so we give you a little bit of a wide shot. But what's interesting about what we're seeing, I mean, we saw this in Long Beach, in Santa Monica. We're in Long Beach. What's different here is there is little to no police presence right now. There's no one stopping them. I don't see any line of officers trying to push anybody out. And right now, I think these stores in this area are just basically at the mercy of these looters. There's a cop car there, and it looks like maybe even an armored vehicle moving in. So there we start to see the police coming into the shopping center. But right now, a lot of looting going on here in Long Beach, similar to what we saw in Santa Monica, what we saw just moments ago when we were overhead.
This is an area, this mall is called the Pike Outlets. There you see the sign over there to your right-hand side, the Pike Outlets. So there's a number of fairly large stores that are in that area. And if these looters have been there for quite a while, then they've had access to a lot of merchandise right now, because you can see this is a sizable facility. Long Beach police have shown up to this place, but there's a couple of fronts here that we've been watching in Long Beach. And keep in mind, this is the same area that just moments ago we showed you that video of people who were looting one store suddenly panicking and getting out of it because the police have showed up. There's also a line there, a police line with the protesters. So that's also going on.
There's we're a long way away from the Monday morning quarterbacking and to the after action reports on this, but there will be a lot of criticism on all sides as to how the law enforcement has responded. They are in a no-win situation here, but it appears that certainly in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, and elsewhere, they're operating with deference to the protesters.
Conan, are you still with us? One of the other pictures. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The last thing they want is for there to be a loss of life amongst the civilian population, particularly amongst those who are demonstrating and with their constitutional authority. but at the same time, they potentially put their own officers at risk. So it's going to be very dicey over the next hours. They're trying to get some sense of control before the sun drops, because the most violence takes place at nightfall. We're seeing an idea as what we can expect in the next few hours, I'm afraid.
And that's exactly what we saw last night. But one of the pictures that really resonates with people, and they don't understand why, when you see the looters moving into a store and removing everything, and you see a police line or a group of officers maybe less than a block away and nothing is done.
Right, and that's the difference from what you had back in 1965, where there actually was an order shoot to kill when it came to looting, and of course during the Rodney King riots. These are departments that are responding in Santa Monica and Los Angeles. These are not city councils that are very conservative, strong law and order. They're very much go out of their way to anticipate as well as to promote the idea of civil discourse and demonstrations and their constitutional right to peaceful assembly. But at the same time, they have this effort, they have this problem with not just a few. There are quite a few folks taking place in the looting that we're seeing in various places, again, because some have rationalized it as part of the protest. It's not just about a crime of opportunity, but this is a way to inflict damage to a society and to a business community that they see as part of the oppressor. And so it's going to be a very difficult night. I'm not exactly
presence of the National Guard. It looks like state troopers. And we had seen on the freeway earlier when police were trying to clear that after the semi drove into that crowd of people, that protesters were putting their hands up in the air and walking toward officers. And when they started walking toward the officers, then you could see it here too. A lot of people with their hands in the air, apparently walking toward the officers. Some you can see walking away, but the officers and the Department of Public Safety made it clear that they will use tear gas tonight to disperse crowds.
Andy McDonald is in that area. I think he has a different vantage point right now. Andy?
Hey, Randy. Yeah, I can hear you. Hey, we're down here on Portland Avenue. We walked from the river, and they said they're heading to U.S. Bank Stadium for a silent protest in honor of George Floyd. This is a pretty big crowd. I was previously over at 35W and University, and that crowd had dispersed. So we moved over here. They're going to take a left toward U.S. Bank Stadium. But this is a pretty big crowd here for the march for honoring George Floyd. They're taking a left on 4th Street, heading back to U.S. Bank, where this
progress has been made, because in an earlier time, there would have been mayors elsewhere who would have defended the way George Floyd was treated. So I just have to say that it's vastly different, and it has to be frustrating for these departments to believe they have done as much as they can. Certainly there's more to be done, but there has been a good faith effort in order for them, for example, the LAPD, to have a law enforcement agency that represents the racial makeup of the city. And for this to happen nonetheless because of the actions of officers in a distant city that obviously has not gone through what LA has gone through.
You're still chanting, say his name, George Floyd, hands up, don't shoot. You can see some of them, it seems like, starting to walk away now, back toward perhaps U.S. Bank Stadium, where we came from. There are some still here in the area, but just in the last maybe 30 seconds, it seems as though some are dispersing. I know you guys maybe even have a better vantage point from your bird's eye view.
So we are seeing basically the same thing we saw earlier this afternoon in Santa Monica, now here in Long Beach. And if there's anything that sort of resembles, it's not nearly what we saw in 92, but if there's anything that starts to resemble it a little bit, it's the scope of how far apart some of the looting has become, and the rioting, if you will, because in that area we had problems in the San Fernando Valley, Long Beach, South LA, East LA. It was everywhere. But now to see this spread down into Long Beach, we have the same problems in Santa Monica. Certainly resources are going to get very, very thin. We have not seen the National Guard out yet, but I think we may soon if this continues.
I think you're absolutely right. We want to let our viewers know, is this is still our live pictures?
They're both live pictures now.
Live pictures on the ground.
Both in Long Beach, but in separate parts of Long Beach.
Right. And
there's a lot of running there, Scott. What is that running from?
Well, I'm not certain. I'm not certain if the police decided to try and move people out. We've seen people run on occasion to get away from police or to maybe get into a store that someone just recently broke into. So it always gets our attention when all of a sudden a large group starts to run. I can't explain why that happened. Possibly some shots were fired, some rubber bullets from the police. I don't know that for sure. I don't see any tear gas. Maybe the police made an announcement. We're going to start making arrests. It's hard to say what actually caused those individuals to start running like that. But certainly when we see that, we know that something substantial is happening. And certainly there are several areas like this. Say that again, please. This is Pine and Broadway. This is the corner of Pine and Broadway, basically in what is really a very nice area of Long Beach. They've really been making Long Beach nicer over the years. They've really restored it compared to what we had here 10 years ago. But certainly we saw that group take off running, and I can't really explain why. Tilt to the right, go one block to the right. There's another group of people. If you look, see we have another group of people here. So this is turning out to be a bit of a tipping point right here in this downtown area because it looks like officers do not want this crowd to join up with the other crowd and for the officers that are here to be surrounded. That's a concern. We saw that a little bit last night. And, things can get tough if the crowd will not move away. The police are not going to let them converge on each other and then have a large crowd on both sides of the officers.
Wow. There's a lot going on in Long Beach, Veronica. So, again, we want to reiterate, these are both live pictures, completely separate areas of Long Beach, but two different areas, two different fronts where the protests are going on as well as looting is going on because we've seen them from both our cameras.
We absolutely have. And the photographer, Ryan Todd, on the ground there, he's right next to the store that was boarded up where people were coming out of. I've been calling it an Urban Outfitters. It's actually just it's a store called Outfitters.
There it is. He hears you.
Yep.
He just showed the sign. Outfitters is the name of this store.
And you can see it looks like they
Car 43, what city why we switch it to? Squad 0. Says 04.
Okay. Okay, all units stand by. We're going to stay on Citywide 6. All units stand by. We are staying on Citywide 6 for now.
Right now, it appeared that I thought I saw some protesters on the other side of that skirmish line, on the other side of the line that the National Guard is holding.
That's right.
That there were objects being thrown, or the police officers, there are objects being thrown at them. Is that true? Are there protesters on the other side of that line they're holding?
Yes, there are. And now we see the reinforcements coming in. It's not clear who these officers are. I don't see any markings yet. Okay, Georgia State Patrol. We got Georgia State Patrol, and they are in what we would call full battle rattle. This is helmet. They've got heavy sticks. These are bigger than your standard nightstick that you and I would have used, Ron, back in the day. They've got knee pads. They've got shin guards. I mean, this is ready for battle kind of gear. They are standing by back here as sort of a third line now that has just formed right next to us. And they are preparing, if the first line is broken, the second line is broken, plus these are reinforcements who can come up and take the place of the front line to give them some relief so you don't have a long-term standoff. We're still hot here, Charlie. Or Charles. Sorry about that. Just making sure you knew. All right, yes, so to answer your question, Ron, there are still some protesters down there, and the police are not advancing, and that's different than last night where they kept advancing until there were other officers there to arrest them. Well, what we have right now is sort of a peaceful standoff, but make no mistake, the police are in charge of this ground right now. They have captured this ground, and they are in control of this ground, and these are classic battle tactics. There's just no other way to put it. Having been in combat, this is the way it works. You try to capture ground and then you try to hold it with as little attrition as possible. And at this point, we're not seeing anyone injured, which is extremely helpful. The gas definitely dispersed the crowd quickly, and then these police officers and National Guard soldiers moved in. We're just going to, guys, just for a second, we're going to give Charles' shoulder here a break and set up the
curfew a little bit more seriously, at least on the west side, because between downtown and Santa Monica, the 10 freeway is virtually empty. There's a few cars that are discovering the closure at Bundy, and they're being forced to exit off at Bundy. But beyond that, there is very, very little traffic, fortunately, on the 10 freeway.
Yeah, and throughout the day, Chris, we have been seeing them make their attempts to shut down access to the Santa Monica area through the 10 freeway and Pacific Coast Highway.
You hold the land, or you hold that little piece of territory or that geographical area, and
and Broadway.
As you mentioned, Gil, this poor barber shop thinking they would probably reopen this weekend only to deal with this and deal with the damage, now having to deal with that, already dealing with the financial strain, I'm sure, of not being able to open over the last several months. We have the other shot here on your left side of your screen. This is in Long Beach. Eliana Moreno is overhead in News Chopper 4 Alpha. Eliana, if you can hear us, what are we seeing here? It appears to be peaceful so far.
And Jonathan, we're also off of Broadway, just like Gil, but at this time in Long Beach. Broadway with across of Pine Avenue. This particular that they are protesting. They're completely different from the looters that we are seeing still at the Pike outlets, not too far, just to the south. But this group, as you can see, is surrounded by officers. You see the officers there in their skirmish line, but most of the protesters either sitting down or just waving their signs, trying to have their voices heard, which is the reason that they're out here today. Let me widen out the shot, though. I want to show you all of the police activity here through the area. And when I do that, too, I'm going to move the shot over to the south. I want to show you where some of that looting is still taking place. Again, those are the Pike outlets just off of Shoreline Drive. We have seen people continue to come in and out of these outlets. We're right overhead right now. I'll ask my pilot, Sarah, if he could just scoop back just a touch. But I'm going to zoom in here on one of the areas that we have seen most of the activity, which is the Hot Topic store here. Again, this is at the outlet mall right off of Shoreline Drive. There are officers nearby, but they're just not in this portion of the outlet mall. And monitoring the scanner and everything that Long Beach police is talking about, they're getting multiple calls about looting at pharmacies nearby, at pawn shops, and then of course the looting that is taking place here. But one of the interesting things that I heard one of the officers say to the dispatcher is, we know about all the looting that is going on, but we cannot separate. We must stick together. So they're not letting their officers break up into little groups to go check out the looting. They're trying to stick together because, again, there's strength in numbers and it will keep those officers protected. But you can see people still coming out here, hands full, and looks like they're even sharing with each other. If they can't carry it, they say, hey, why don't you carry this for me because my hands are full, and then they move on to the next store.
Ileana, how close is that large group to this?
This is maybe about a mile away. So the large group, and I'm pretty sure I can get it here in one shot for you. The other group is just off of Broadway and Pine, and then this looting is taking place just to the south off of Shoreline and Pine. So it's maybe about a mile around that distance. A lot of these protesters were actually closer to the outlet mall.
Screen with what Boyd's camera is showing. And
we're moving.
Stance on the steps of City Hall, and it's quite a scene out there as well. So we have, I would say, about 3 major protests that are happening in our community.
Right, so the last few seconds, we've been showing you video, and this is the video that we have been witnessing throughout the afternoon. This is Santa Monica. This is that Vons grocery store where we saw a number of people running with merchandise, and then just seconds later, we saw this, a fire that was burning right down the street in a jewelry store that was also being looted. There are various scenes from out Santa Monica, and then there's that video, that dynamic video of the National Guard protecting our Los Angeles courthouse.
Need to take people to the police station once they are arrested. But last night, 157 arrests, but we saw them far earlier in the evening, and we have not seen that. You see that the police officers have zip ties. That's what they use when they do make the arrest. You'll notice that they'll pull the zip ties off of their belts, and they'll use that. And all of these police officers, we understand, came off the buses. So it seems like they have brought in even more reinforcements as they prepare to really clear the streets for the night. Now at 9:33, the curfew went into effect at 9. So more police officers just arriving. You see the zip ties there.
Are you okay? You got enough people with you? Yeah, we're good, and we're stashing the 19 sister cars underneath and bringing 35 guys up top. Copy that. Squad, can you find out from 1802 Sam where the two different groups are now?
Like there are some stragglers from that large group that's been hanging out in Santa Monica, the group possibly that was over on Ocean at one point, now appears to be moving southbound on 6th Street. So they're moving southbound on 6th Street, and this particular group on scooters and on foot is certainly outnumbered. It's one of the few times during the course of all of this that I've seen any of these groups completely outnumbered by law enforcement. They are injecting a large amount of law enforcement presence into these various streets. There's been reports, multiple reports throughout the day, but have picked up in the last hour or so of somebody starting fires along Wilshire and at other locations in Santa Monica, such as the car fire that we just showed you. And so they are definitely starting to cover more ground here. Again, with the help of the LA County Sheriff's Department, the Santa Monica Police Department is coordinating all of this, and they are covering a lot more ground, almost in a grid fashion, across the city of Santa Monica, specifically between Lincoln and the beach.
Chris, I'm really just fascinated by the posture of these officers because it seems very relaxed and calm. This doesn't seem confrontational in any way. You know, looks like they are kind of talking to some of the protesters, but moving them along very nicely. Very different.
It's calm. This is peaceful. Now, what's happening down there is unlawful. They should not be on the street right now. This is an unlawful assembly, and so they certainly have the right to begin making arrests if that order is given. If that order is given, they will be completely within their right to begin arresting these folks. They should not be out right now. Right. They're not even carrying signs. They're really kind of hanging out in the street. They're on scooters, they're on foot, they're on bicycles, some of them, but you can see the overwhelming show of force that is being presented to this particular group here. This same scene, or similar scenes like it, as I look across the city between the 3rd Street Promenade and where we're looking right here, you're starting to see more collections of law enforcement vehicles getting ready for what hopefully will be a peaceful night here in Santa Monica, but they're at least getting ready to show this force.
Chris, are you seeing any smoke? Because Santa Monica Fire just tweeted.
Hang on, stand by.
Okay.
Stand by.
If you see, are you seeing smoke? There is a structure fire that Santa Monica Fire just tweeted at the 700 block of Broadway. Is that near you? Are you seeing any smoke?
700 Broadway, that's going to be over towards Lincoln. We are very close by there. We can swing the camera over here in just a second. In fact, I believe it is right below us. This is going to be Lincoln right here, Brian. If you look, this is the, this, I think, is the Vaughn. So if you look a little bit steep, let's see how we'll circle around and we'll be able to spot that. If there is a fire, we should be able to see it here. A little left pedal turn, and we should have a visual if indeed there's anything burning. I do see an LAPD helicopter circling the area. I don't see any smoke. Okay. Don't see any smoke, but I do see a very large mess. Actually, there's looters at Bay City's Italian Deli running through the right across. Hold on a second. That's actually down the block. Okay, the front of the Vons. There's actually there's looters running through there, and there's a couple of fire trucks in front of the Vons. I don't see any smoke. You can see some people running through the parking lot across the street from Vaughn's. I don't know what business this is here, but if you widen out just a little bit, there are a couple of fire trucks at the Vaughn's over to the left. If you just pan over to the left and tilt up just a little bit, you'll see that Vaughn's. Widen out a little bit.
History has shown that that has happened time and time again, where people are out doing their righteous protest, and then others come in who want to take advantage of, who want to take opportunity to do unlawful acts.
Are there any efforts?
That's not a surprise, but it is something that we cannot continue to. We don't want to condone. We don't want to condone.
Najuma, we had heard today that there were several groups that were organizing.
And the clearing of the freeway that took place, and then now all within a few hundred feet, it's escalated to this tense situation right now with the protesters who are peaceful but refusing to leave and obey the curfew, and this ever-growing presence of officers who are would appear to be in position to make arrests.
We got a call
That's what I'm thinking.
of potential arson going on inside the building, and they need to keep the firefighters safe, provide some protection, clear the building out if there is, in fact, a fire going on inside. As you said, the good news is there's no smoke coming out, but clearly something is going on. And that's the same Vaughn's that we've been watching, and we just showed you video of it being looted just a few minutes ago. So it is a front that has had a lot of problems this afternoon there in Santa Monica, and as we continue to scour through the area, you're seeing a lot of activity.
These appear to be folks who are these people are certainly up to no good. That's going to be. We'll go ahead and see what business that is on the right side there, Brian. Well, it's a Converse. No, it's a motorcycle gear. It's a motorcycle shop. Looters in and out of the shops right along Lincoln Boulevard. And if we widen out, you can see this is a large crowd of looters that are going store to store down Lincoln Boulevard south of Broadway and hitting up any easy target that they could find.
In both cases, so you're seeing that occur both in Long Beach and Santa Monica. To the left, that is that Pike Outlet Mall in Santa Monica, where also a Bearcat is set up there. There is now some police protection, a police presence. Let's bring in Scott Reif as he's watching this scene. It looks like they're finally locking this place down, Scott.
They are, yeah, this outlet mall here.
And 1800 X-ray, you copied eastbound Cedar towards Lakeshore Drive?
Here, but the police department has finally really taken control of.
Not messing around. They're getting these people out of here tonight, and the people are basically running. They're surrounded. They're looking for a place to be. We're trying to stay somewhere and just kind of be safe in here. So please know that we're trying to do that. So what do you do?
And, you know, Lauren.
And so that. Yeah.
We're starting to see more arrests now, Colleen, in the Santa Monica area there on the right side of your screen. And it sounds like police are kind of circled in on a group of people who are in this area. It's unclear if these people were looting. It's unclear if these people were simply protesting. We will try to find out more. But Najuma, as we have you on, Reverend, I mean, how do we?
And our role as prophetic people is to continue to pray for change and to continue to pray for safety, because we also don't want to see anybody get hurt. We don't want to see anybody. Nobody get hurt. Nobody. We don't want anybody to get hurt. So we continue to
go in and make arrests. So that may be what's happening here is they're not letting them have any way out because they're going to try to make some arrests here for people for breaking curfew tonight. And the people who are there are very well aware of that. And
open up out of the shot, come towards us, you're going to see all the patrol cars, and you're going to see they're sort of surrounded on 3rd Street and on Broadway. And they're trying to get this crowd to disperse, but they're resisting. They're not doing it. The shopping center, that was a real hot spot when we first arrived on scene. That's calmed down. They do seem to have control of that, but this situation here still seems pretty volatile.
All right, Scott, keep your eyes open on that one as we continue to watch your live pictures with this, as well as Chris Christie in Santa Monica.
We want to bring in a very important interview right now via Skype. Anger, frustration, it's growing around the country and over the
Drive, all spread out from Cedar, blocking traffic.
We saw protesters starting to throw water bottles towards the police officers there. And I'm going to step out of the frame so we can see the guardsmen and the police officers behind me. But yeah, they started throwing water and just whatever they could in that direction. Officers started moving up to push them back, and things just turned violent. And we were literally standing here at this corner when police officers.
Lieutenant Cruz, you copy the new info?
No, what's the new info, squad?
The group from Cedar has spilled off of Cedar into Inner Lakeshore Drive. They have Inner Lakeshore Drive spread out, and they're blocking it, and they're all
up as well, and they're taken off. They may trap them at Bobby and Steve's. In that parking lot area, because there's a fence there, as Lauren showed us.
Yeah, let's go to Lauren right now. She is safely on the other side, we believe, of the police line. Lauren?
Yes, we're here. Officers are giving us instructions as to where we're going. We're showing them our press passes, and they are giving us instructions as to where we're going. They had the crowd all really penned in. Now they've started with the non-lethal rounds that they're firing. The crowd basically was running in every direction, trying
Their right for civil disobedience here, civil discord.
Colleen, if that's for Gil, yes, we watched this group at 6th in Colorado. The mobile field force was slowly pushing them back down towards Colorado, and that's when we saw the other field forces move in and block off the direction here on both sides of 6th Street there as they continue to push the group. About 30 protesters there in the group that are individually being arrested at this point. There was a dispersal notice given earlier, and they were moving slowly down the street, and that's when the officers decided to close in and isolate this small group of about 25 to 30 protesters here, and slowly but surely they're taking each one into custody.
Is there a large bus? I mean, how far away is the area where they're going to take them and book them?
Yeah, they're walking them across the street here. I don't see a bus yet, but they're sitting them down on the curb across the Colorado. But you see them there individually being walked over and being sat down on the curb for waiting on, I should say, a van or a bus to come in here to take them away.
Well, and on Friday night, Jonathan, you may remember, and Gil, you were over this, about 500 people were arrested in downtown LA. Most of them were cited for civil disobedience and kicked loose within just a few hours. As many as 18, though, were arrested for much more serious crimes like arson. I think there was assault with a deadly weapon.
There was even an attempted murder charge, yeah.
Yeah, someone tried to run over a police officer down there.
We want to get to our NBC4's Kim Tobin here, who's been following the developments on the ground there. And Kim, you've been giving us perspective. Kim, are you with us? About what's going on there on the ground and whether or not you have an update on the injury to that officer. We believe that you were reporting earlier an officer was shot.
Yeah, Jonathan, and we just got an update here. This is all coming from our sources here as this developing situation is happening. We had reports of an officer who was shot in the foot, non-life-threatening injuries around the area of Santa Monica, Venice. Looks like it's a little bit closer to the Venice area. So we're talking about Lincoln and Rose, and we're hearing from our source that this female officer was shot in the foot. It looks like a graze injury to her foot there. She was taken to the hospital, and again, she is not having any life-threatening injuries. This happened in the area of the Casablanca restaurant in the Whole Foods parking lot around that area of Lincoln and Rose. And in that same area, it also looks like about 10 minutes later, police apparently, it looks like they said that several gunshots were also fired from a car. So there's a lot of chaos happening around here. Again, we have the protesters, we have these looters that are around here. So some of these separate groups, some of these kind of people breaking off from these different groups as well. So whether or not this has to do with these actual protests or the riots that we've seen going on there, the two separate incidents, not very clear at this time. So we're working to get more information information on that. But again, a female officer shot in the foot, a graze injury, taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. But here's some of the video that we have been seeing out of the Santa Monica area. We've seen some fires set by those looters that have attacked those stores there, just pretty much completely cleaned them out around the area of 4th Street and Santa Monica Boulevard here in that area. That's where we've seen a lot of the police had to come after that it all got cleared out here too. Those stores having the sirens go off, and then those small fires were set. Police moved in there. The firefighters have moved in there. But just a really violent situation when we watched a lot of those people just going in there, using their own feet to pretty much kick in some of the front doors with all of that glass shattering, and they run in, grab as much as they can, whether it's backpacks, bicycles. We've seen people grabbing 2 guitars strung across their back here, sweatshirts, shoes, just pretty much anything they can get their hands on at this point, and kind of just running in there with a whole group of people, some of them dropped off by a car, maybe does a round and then comes back and picks them up. But just a lot of devastation, a lot of destruction that we've seen in that area. Likely about 35 businesses, restaurants, smaller businesses, some of the commercial businesses just completely demolished there in that area. So this has been really tough to see for a lot of the people. Again, for us, are hearing about a lot of people who are trying to really block a lot of these looters from getting into this area, and they get completely overwhelmed when a big group of them just kind of pushes them out of the way. And they try to keep calming the crowd, but you can just see the violence that's really started there in that area. Some of those fires set, and we talked about it too during the press conference with Santa Monica officials. They're really begging and asking people, clear the 911 channels here. Don't call police, because they are completely overwhelmed there with those fires and with all of this happening. They're asking, unless it's an absolute life-threatening emergency, don't call 911 right now, because they have so much to respond to. They're spread so thin in this when they're trying to just keep up with those protesters and with those demonstrators there in the peaceful area. So they're watching that, but they're also watching those separate groups of those looters and people that are just coming in and taking advantage of such a tense situation, doing that damage and then stealing what they can out of there. So we're going to keep watching that. But again, just that update there, that officer, a female, she was shot in the foot, grazed, non-life-threatening injuries there in the area of Lincoln and Rose. We don't know if this has to do with all of the chaos that's going on there. Could be completely unrelated, but we'll keep an eye on it. We'll send it back to you.
You know, Kim, we're going to go back topside to News Chopper 4 Bravo over Santa Monica, but I want to add, as we heard from Chief Michael Moore today, there have been a couple of LAPD officers who were hurt as well. One officer suffered a fractured skull when he was hit in the head with a brick. He went into surgery. He's recovering. We hope to get an update on his condition here. But there have been injuries to officers and deputies, broken bones, concussions, things of that nature. All right, Gil Levis, tell us where you are. Is this a police car or is it a civilian car?
It appears to be a civilian car, but we're not exactly sure. It could be an unmarked undercover vehicle. But this one is at 11th Street and Broadway in Santa Monica. We just caught word of it. The Simon Desk Jack Noyes let us know that there was another car fire. We found it close by, and you see some of the people out here kicking the car and throwing things at it. But right now, no fire department on scene here. Fortunately, it's away from that building. It's putting up a lot of smoke. Actually, here comes the fire department now. So let's see if they have any support from the police department. I don't see any units here on scene, and hopefully those people will leave the firemen alone so that they can get in there and put out that fire. But right now, it is 11th and Broadway. Another car fire here, and it's unclear if this is a police vehicle or not.
And Gil,
I'm getting exhaust, Jim.
And Gil, how far is this from where we were seeing just moments ago police taking people into custody?
On their lips, they have been talking about the need for change in the system. They were here to make a point, and many of them may have decided that civil disobedience and being arrested was how they were going to make that point tonight. They certainly were not in a hurry to leave when police officers wanted them to, and now that is happening. Police are
no more cameras on those blocks, or at least 2-3 blocks.
All right, they ran out of cameras.
hearing people chanting George Floyd. So these are people who apparently either got away from the crowd before, or people who have just come to see and are supportive of the protesters. A little hard to tell. There's a lot of chaos here. Or not chaos is probably the wrong word. There's just a lot of people around and a lot of cars around, so it's hard to necessarily always tell who's who. But
Lauren, can you tell
you?
Is that the firefighters would stay off in the distance and wait till they had escort, and there you see the police just showed up.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw that. One of the persons out here ran up to that fireman and yanked his hose. I mean, he's doing his job. He's trying to do what he can. He could have been injured. That hose could have come out of his hand, and those hoses are high pressure. So, fortunately, the officers got here in the nick of time, and were able to fend off those people that are in the area. Now you see it's cleared out, and now the firemen have room to do their work.
We want to let you know as we continue to look at the picture here, they seem to have that fire under control. We have our Gotti Schwartz on the ground right now in Santa Monica. Gotti, give us an idea of where you are and what you've seen today.
Hey, Colleen. Yeah, so right now we are basically on that 4th Street, the area that Kimmy Tobin was just describing, and this is the Chase Bank. I'm going to just show you what's going on inside. You've got somebody with a camera inside, but this was one of the entrances, and then inside you basically have just smashed windows in every single direction. People were running with...
Our chopper is probably our best view. Again, this is Boyd's camera. Boyd, go ahead.
Yeah, my view is somewhat blocked too, Randy, of the actual process for arresting these protesters who refuse to disperse. I'm looking mostly at the backs of officers.
By Fort Worth Police.
It's one of those things where there were probably some people in that group who expected to get arrested, and then others who thought there was still time to run, but their judgment was flawed if that was their intention, because at some point they just decided no one was going to leave, and when they did start shooting off those concussion grenades, you could see a number of people, just trying to get away, and then at that point the entire area had been surrounded by officers, so they just pushed them back up into the parking lot from where they had come.
That situation, but again, it does look peaceful, other than the fact that they have closed down the West 7th Bridge. We're taking a wide look over Fort Worth now, and Tanya, if I can, I want to take a step back, because we have seen obviously the situations with the demonstrations not only in Fort Worth but in Dallas. If you could, because I know you're very well sourced within the law enforcement community, can you speak to what you were hearing from the officers you know?
'Looks like they're going east on Schiller.
The group is going eastbound Schiller from State. Eastbound Schiller from State.
1800 X-ray, I need Astor and Schiller closed.
All right, I need cars to close Astor and Schiller. I need Astor and Schiller closed.
1899.
1899.
Now, we don't have the retouch for that. I'm the only one here. Unless there's somebody behind this group.
Is there anybody close? 1899 is the only one there. Anybody close? Astor and Schiller, 1800 X-ray, once that intersection closed.
On. Now they're coming back.
All right, they said they're coming back west now. 3700, or is you and your group?
Immediate movement of a line of police making arrests with essentially a zero tolerance policy. I expected that the protesters would have learned from that, adapted, and come out with new tactics of their own today. We didn't see that. What we saw today actually was the tear gas deployed earlier than 9 o'clock, as you saw in Faith and Rebecca's excellent reporting. You saw that they were deploying the tear gas earlier on, as it appeared the protesters were throwing bottles of water, shooting off fireworks. It was more of a defensive rather than offensive tactic. The offensive tactic came at 9 o'clock, just as it did last night. Heavy deployment of gas. The multiple canisters. Really, there was no direction you could go without getting gassed except out of here, which was.
How would you describe the feeling?
We're seeing more tear gas, actually, Julie. There's another row of officers, and I'm going to have.
So you can't go down there with the car. But these side streets, as officers were protecting the promenade and as officers were making sure that people were protesting peacefully over on the other side, they basically left these streets somewhat open. And we'll just take a look out here. So obviously you have this intersection blocked off. But Colleen, you take a look down this way, and this is... there are no police officers down that way blocking people from coming down. So people are circling 4th Street, 5th Street, and then down, I believe, on 2nd Street, hitting some of these stores that are completely open right now, grabbing surfboards, grabbing clothing, grabbing anything they can, still getting in their cars and still leaving. Meanwhile, police officers are down here protecting firefighters, because many times when the firefighters arrive inside of these stores, they are entering stores where there are looters all around, some of them setting fire. So, as you can imagine, a very dangerous situation.
Well, we can see the gas. We can't see the people because it's obstructed by a building, but we're definitely seeing the gas that's coming up, a couple hundred feet down the street from the officers that you're looking at, or you have been looking at, and they're not shooting that obviously into emptiness. So. There are some people out of our view right now that gas is being aimed at.
Boyd, we're going to take a little different view here. We have our Danny Spiewak at the Government Center, who has a different, Gordon Severson, who's at the Government Center for a little different angle on what's happening. Gordon?
Yeah, we're here at the Government Center where a large group has stopped inside the Government Center, and a couple other groups fragmented from this main group. But we've seen a lot of military presence and police officers kind of setting up a perimeter around the Government Center courtyard. We're moving away to get out of this area, but it looks like this might be the next place where officers make another round of arrests. To kind of push people one way or another. We did kind of see the beginnings of that, and it looks
Probably a handful, and they're very open about what looks to be like agitation. A lot of them are the ones that are running to the front, hurling back some of the tear gas that we've seen deployed. They have fireworks. They have backpacks full of fireworks, and they're lighting off those fireworks. But they blend in with everybody. They look like, to be honest, they're wearing backpacks, they're wearing masks. They blend in with almost everybody out here. So it's very difficult for authorities to know who is doing what out here, but we have seen some people that look like they are getting ready for what's possibly going to be a long night. That is the small majority, followed by the hundreds of looters that we've seen out here, and then you've got the thousands of peaceful protesters that were just about 5 blocks away that had no idea this was going on.
Once again, I want to remind people we're waiting for a news conference in Santa Monica right now, but we want to stay with Gotti. Gotti, that stretch there, you said you're very familiar with it. Have you seen any of the owners come through and see what is left of their businesses?
Yeah, so we talked to, they were so distraught. Obviously, we wanted to give them their space, but we talked to the woman who owns that jewelry store. She was devastated. I mean, she could not believe that they had gotten the safe from the back. They were able to save papers. They were not able to save any of their jewelry. They were able to get paperwork out of there. But they were very upset. And then they also watched as the firefighters all of a sudden pulled out and went to another fire, and they were just standing there looking at the smoke that was continuing to billow out of their store.
Are in there taking people into custody, and then there's this large bus over here and some vans where they have people where they're taking them once they're arrested inside the Bobby and Steve's parking lot. But I think what's just really remarkable about this is to see the force that is here, this massive presence of National Guard. There's a Humvee here. There is State Patrol. There is Minneapolis Police, and they are all here surrounding these protesters. At this point, as I've been pointing out, I think that there's far more police officers here than protesters, and this sort of was the same method that they used last night, right, where they were going to separate these groups, make them smaller, take them into custody. So just kind of take this scene in. This is what's happening. And as I think I've mentioned, a lot of these protesters seemed very ready to be arrested tonight. They did try and run from police. They tried to run away. Police had them surrounded at all ends. They hopped a fence, saw police, hopped right back over, and then the rubber bullets came from over that fence. So police did get them surrounded, but many of them were here. They didn't plan on necessarily fighting back, but they also didn't plan on going home, and now they've decided to accept the consequences of that, which is arrest here tonight.
I know.
And as I mentioned, in that group, go ahead, J. Randy, sorry.
I was just going to say, I know you're not in a great vantage point to look down the other way of Washington Avenue, but Boyd was talking about officers setting up on the other side of the bridge, looking into the Seven Corners area. Are you getting any sense of, have you been hearing tear gas being fired, any sense at all, or are you just too far away?
I'm too far away to see anything. I know I was jarred for a moment because I heard another bang, and I guess my ear isn't trained well enough to know if it was tear gas or a rubber bullet or what it was, or a flashbang. But I did hear another noise, and it startled me because I thought nothing's really going on over here. Why would they do that? And then we realized it did appear it was coming from the other side of the bridge. So something was happening there. I just am not sure. Now I want to show you what's happening. Police seem to be walking this way. Our photo
there in violation of that curfew there. There were protests, and the county has described that as being peaceful.
And we're starting to hear that, some of the chanting.
You didn't have to, but you did.
I can't breathe. Right now. That's the chant now. I can't breathe.
Rex, thank you for
but again, a peaceful protest here in front of LA City Hall, where the National Guard is here in front of LA City Hall, right in front of them, the LA City Police Department. And again, just very peaceful at this point here in downtown Los Angeles. Back to you.
It's just such a powerful image to see this with the National Guard and officers standing there protecting City Hall, and then those protesters chanting, "I can't breathe."
That's a photograph that we're going to see
if you're down in the
for
crowd
quite some
watching
time.
the stream,
It may go down in history as
I'll
we remember that
shout
moment
out
where City Hall had to be protected by the National Guard in this moment of unrest. So that is Rob McMillan reporting live from City Hall, downtown LA, and we're happy to report, though, that we haven't seen any unrest in downtown LA today, which is very good news. On the right-hand side, Chris Christie has been watching the situation in Long Beach. We don't know if this is something in particular that's going on, but let's check in with him. Chris?
One lone.
Yeah, David, we just watched somebody in that large crowd that we showed you here, a long pine. It was a very peaceful, it still is, fairly peaceful. However, that person right there with his head covered up, I can't tell, it's like a white t-shirt, long sleeve t-shirt actually, and he's now, you see the black stripes, he is carrying something that's shooting fireworks into the air towards police. And that was enough to agitate police here, and we've seen a number of protesters
outside of the building, just a big window actually.
They're starting to scatter. Let's go ahead and
Window on
widen
the south side is still open. We'll let the zone know.
If you go down there,
More fireworks in there.
we got a bunch of people on the patio right now. I've got honestly a better view up here
Terry
because
O'Day,
I can
that
see
spelling
all
is
over the
T-E.
place.
They were both arrested. They've both since been released. Tanaya is not facing any charges, and the mayor says she's calling for the charges to be dropped against
Where's that protest at? On Wells?
We're at North of Wells. We have a skirmish line form.
That includes Morehouse and Spelman, a lot of mobilization on.
All right, they got the skirmish line set up at North and Wells, and they need additional units to come in from the north.
We understand the emotions that
so now
we
they have the,
are
they have
all
the
experiencing
MRAPs coming in. The
throughout our
armored cars are
community, and
coming
we
in
want
right
to send a
here.
message of unity and love
now we get
throughout.
Having had a chance to look at this video that we were just recently getting in from Atlanta Police, what are you thinking as you watch that video? Because as Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, she said it was clearly excessive in terms of use of force.
Over from Gordon's direction, because it did sound far away and nothing really is happening here.
All right, let's check in. Boyd Hooper isn't too far away.
Here, the arrests continue.
From you. Okay, thank you, Lauren. We appreciate
Our neighbors at this time. Take it seriously. Thank you.
I would now like to welcome up our Chief of Police, Cynthia Renaud. That is CYNTHIARENAUD. Chief.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to take a quick second and apologize for the earlier press conference that we put out that might have seemed a little bit short. There's actually nobody here but us and a camera person, so it is difficult to have a press conference when there's no one here to ask questions. And I think it made our press conference look short. So along with what we're dealing with, we do still have COVID-19, and so there are no reporters here.
Non-lethal round. Tear gas had been fired previously down that street. There were some very adamant protesters down there who were still chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." That's those folks are the objects of these officers' attention right now. And I'm going to assume that they are also surrounded on the other side, and that there will likely be some arrests here as well. We were wondering what they were paying attention to. Now we know it is a group of protesters down the street that they have been, I would say, tending to, because they're just watching them right now as they're in the street, and we'll see what evolves.
All right, we appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much, Boyd. And Randy, we didn't see this happening. If it did happen last night, I don't think the arrest numbers support that, but it seems to me that the arrest numbers that we get tomorrow morning are going to be much higher than they were for last night.
Of any of the criminal activity of any of those suspects being injured, that is information that it will take me a little bit of time to compile as we work through this. But again, my message from the Santa Monica Police Department, and really from all the LA County law enforcement agencies, is to obey the curfew orders that are in place in our city and in yours. Please stay safe, and we will get through this. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to welcome up our Deputy Chief of the Santa Monica Fire Department. That is Judah Mitchell. That's JUDAHMITCHELL. Thank you, Judah.
Thank you. And once again, I'd like to remind the community that Santa Monica Fire Department goal with this dynamic event is to protect life and property in the community. Please, as everyone's mentioned, follow the curfew. We're working with PD and our other area agencies, fire departments here helping us. We're deployed throughout the city. We've had 9 fires to date. We don't have any active fires burning at this time.
Spot to try to find where the group was. We saw law enforcement all over the city, but we haven't seen any law enforcement presence in several blocks. So I'm just getting this sense that that this group is sort of being ushered or herded into a certain area where we're going to be encountering law enforcement at some point because of the heavy numbers we saw earlier this evening. We haven't seen them for quite a while, so my guess is they're somewhere around here watching the movement of this group and trying to get them to a certain point where they can start closing in and making arrests.
Have your guys come up and shadow this protest up North Avenue and Wells. Start heading that way.
4 on the way. 3700.
3700.
I got a car blocking eastbound traffic on North Avenue.
3700, you're requesting a car to block eastbound traffic North Avenue?
99 Quad.
All right, I need one police car to block eastbound traffic North Avenue. I need a car to block eastbound traffic North Avenue at Wells.
To follow it.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chief. With that, I just want to remind the public about the ways that they can stay informed at this time. Please sign up for Santa Monica emergency alerts at Santa Monica.
They're falling back, and nobody's pushing. It's just I have to wonder, be honest with you, how long is this going to last? I mean, this has been going on for at least a couple hours.
Sure.
But nobody seems to be losing patience, and I don't know. I mean, but it's also clear that the police are not going to let them push forward.
Right.
So
we haven't seen any movement. Yeah.
At some point, either the crowd is going to disperse, or the bike officers, or at some point we may see the police start to push the crowd back.
Okay.
And the question is, when is that going to happen?
Sure.
And it's 9:13. The other night when I was covering the protest in Fort Worth, it ended at, right at 9:53. It was right before it all ended. But they on Friday they did loops around downtown. They went down and came back up around Sundance Square and all that, and it probably 4 or 5, maybe 4 times.
Online that fueled more concern from people, even who were not there. And so even today we were seeing protests from the AUC, from students that probably even know these young people that feel like they could be in similar situations with them or similar situations as them, wanting to protest even more because people
Down at Division and Larrabee. Male black is down on the unconscious.
All right, this is 161 Adam, Division and Larrabee, male down unconscious.
Right here at Washington Avenue and the 35W overpass. As you pointed out before, we're only about 2 blocks away from the U.S. Bank Stadium, and that is where this group started. So I don't know if many of the folks from this group wound up leaving and heading over to U.S. Bank Stadium, whereas Gordon's there's another protest. The people who are here were running from police. They tried to get away. They could not. They were corralled. And that was it. Oh, look, they're empty. Yep, they're emptying pockets. You can see the arrest taking place right now. What's going on? The police search of the people that they are arresting right now. I think Adam's got a good shot of that.
Yeah, and they had tweeted earlier.
And we did see a tweet come out earlier. Yeah.
We're on the same page, Lauren.
Sorry, Julie. I was just going to say that this is a misdemeanor. Yeah, it's a misdemeanor arrest for curfew is what we believe these people are facing right now.
Well, we did see a tweet come out earlier from the Minneapolis Police Department saying that in that area at Bobby and Steve's, they'd already confiscated 1 weapon. So that's one of the reasons why they search when they make the arrest is to be able to take away any weapons that people are planning on using. Interesting development as well. When we were listening to the press conference earlier with the Department of Public Safety, the commissioner said that they have been finding flammable objects that have clearly been planted around the Twin Cities. Some appear to have been planted days ago, some within the last 24 hours. And it really speaks to their belief that the people who are here, not just to protest, but to cause harm, are coordinated, and that they are placing these around the Twin Cities. And the Department of Public Safety believes that this is the bad element of this is a professional and highly organized group that plans, of course, to destroy parts of the city. Last night it was a relief that there were very few fires, and we could see occasionally the Minnesota National Guard had choppers that they had loaded.
The number of protesters here, you can see that there's easily 100 people around that number. They're mostly on the steps of City Hall or on the street. That street's going to be Spring. And then there's also a field just to the west of that. So a lot of them are sitting down there. These are all protesters. Since we've arrived on scene, we have only are just standing strong, waving their signs, continuing to call for justice in the death of George Floyd, and continuing to call for an end to police brutality. And of course, we have seen some looting in the area, not necessarily right here near City Hall, but that is something else that we're also going to keep an eye out for.
Well, all of a sudden we see some down the stairs, or are the protesters just turning and walking away?
I believe they're just turning away, but let me move the shot over here. I wanted to look at the police headquarters to see if perhaps there was a line of officers moving that way, but I don't see one. Typically when we see a crowd move like this, there's a skirmish line of officers pushing them out of the way, getting them to move, and in this case, that did not seem to be the case.
No, it
looks like
they were walking down.